Welcome back. I'm Jocelyn Bamford. My guests today are Catherine Swift, President of the Coalition of Concerned Manufacturers and Businesses in Canada, and Shelley Bacon and Todd Stafford, owners of Northern Cable. And we're talking about the push for electrification of the power grid. Shelley, the Ontario government under Doug Ford is pushing for electrification of the power grid. What will be the impacts for small to medium-sized business if this goes through?
Well, the first I'd like to point out is that we have a peak capacity in Ontario of approximately 25,000 megawatts. Currently, there's about 40,000 megawatts available, but at any one time, the peak is about 25. From all calculations, it is predicted that we would need double that to electrify the grid. And as Todd said at an earlier point, we believe that's going to take much, much longer than the folks are talking about now. Our concern is that someone is going to have to pay for this, and that includes the transmission as well. And we have to be careful we don't have another global adjustment debacle and put this on the back of small and medium businesses, which will drive more of them out of the province.
So, Catherine, how much is this electrification going to cost, both the consumer and small to medium-sized business?
Well, what's interesting is that governments aren't even hardly talking about how much it'll cost. There have been estimates made by some private groups, and the entity that you mentioned earlier, the IESO in Ontario, Independent Electrical System Operator, they did a study where they figure about $500 billion. That's for Ontario. The Royal Bank did a study that said $2 trillion for Canada, but we don't know. These are just estimates, and I find it highly suspicious that governments rarely, we know they do internal studies, they don't publicize them for people. So I think we can say scary amounts of money in terms of what that'll mean for your own electrical bill in your house. Minimum 50% increase, likely more, and it would be the same for small and medium-sized business. So we're talking massive problems here. And as Shelley said, we're already uncompetitive with other jurisdictions around the world, notably the United States, and they're our closest, economic competitor. And businesses are already leaving Canada. So why on earth are we punishing ourselves when we're 1.5% of the world's emissions, and we have a system that's already nationally 85% emissions free, and provincially 93%? We're already there.
And my understanding is that there was a study on the cost of sustainability in Ontario, and that study hasn't been released to the public. A good question is, where's the study? What does it say? And what the impact is going to be for electrical costs in Ontario, and as we roll this out throughout Canada to other provinces as well. Todd, electricity is creeping back up for manufacturers in Ontario, especially in the small to medium-sized businesses. What are you seeing?
We're definitely seeing that. We pay, our Class B facility pays 30 to 40% more for electricity than a Class A facility. So that's just a direct burden on small and medium business. And add that, the carbon tax, none of the stuff coming into this country has a carbon tax on it. Throw the GST on top of all those other taxes, and it's just becoming unbearable.
It is very uncompetitive. Catherine, you wrote an article for the Niagara Independent sounding the alarm for electrification. Please enlighten us on your premise in that article. We just got about a minute left.
Once again, I've actually wrote a bunch of articles over the last year or so, but things are getting real now because they're starting to name these bodies and, these oversight bodies and so on. Ontario has named one too, by the way. And we, the coalition, did a submission just very recently at the end of June to the Ontario Energy Transition Panel. And basically saying this is not achievable in the time frame. We haven't talked yet about technology either. A lot of the problems here is battery technology. We know that electric vehicles, for example, don't work too well in our cold climate here in Canada. We also know that they have kept, a lot of the people pushing this agenda have kept very quiet about the downsides. We know, for example, many items in wind turbines, in electric vehicles and so on cannot be recycled. They are not the environmental dream that they are being put forward to be. We also know for, say, electric vehicles, which is what probably most average folks would relate to, they're piling up on car lots. People don't want them. So, we see all these problems. We're being forced onto a costly self-punishing agenda that we don't need, that's likely impossible unless there's some massive technological innovation in the next little while, which scientists don't believe there will be. And of course, immensely hurting our finances, our standard of living, and our competitiveness as an economy.